Today is the day that I've been waiting for, because today I finally get to show you this really cool cabin that we've built. Let's take a look. Hello and welcome to our brand new cabin. I am so excited to share this space with you. The base of this cabin was constructed from the Palmarco analog cabin, which was supplied by Trade Tested. So this is a 27 square meter Kitset log cabin. This was an absolute joy to build. After the site work and the foundations, the actual cabin itself amazingly went up in only about 3 days, which I just think is extraordinary. But since then, we have poured a tremendous amount of time and effort in taking this kit set to the next level and making it all that it can be, and I'm just so thrilled with the result of this. The cabin itself, as I've mentioned, is a kit set. It's made of Nordic spruce timber, which is absolutely beautiful. I mean, you just can't beat the look of a log cabin, and I am just so thrilled with how this has turned out. The logs are good quality, good thickness as well. They're about 70 millimeters thick, so it is quite a chunky, robust cabin. And yeah, I'm just so happy with how this has turned out. We have done a lot of modifications to this cabin though, since it's been built. The big difference is obviously these decks that we've built. So the cabin itself is just shy of 27 square meters, but then we have drastically added on to the exterior living space. So we've added an additional sort of 25 square meters of decking onto it. The first part of that being this front porch area, which I just am in love with. This cabin is situated in a spot where it's such a sun trap. The sun just pours on this spot all day, and so it's lovely to have this area out the front to get out of the weather if it's there, but also just to sit in the sun and enjoy the spot. We've got the barbecue here now as well, which I'm really stoked with. For me, one of the things that cabin life is all about is connection with nature. And so adding on exterior living areas like this was a really important facet of this build for me. I wanted a space where we could be out of the weather, where we could enjoy the sunshine, where you could just enjoy being outdoors, but also having a little bit of protection and enclosure from the elements. So I'm just so happy with how this space looks. I love the decision that we made to create the central gable for the porch area as well. It just opens and expands the space so much, and I'm just really thrilled with how that turned out as well. One thing that I realized in the last videos on this cabin I hadn't really gone into detail about was why I'm building it. I am really, really close with my family. For me, family is absolutely everything, and especially my mum and dad. My mum and dad retired last year, and they live quite far away from us. So they live about 3 hours drive away, and I really wanted to create a space where they could be at home here on the land themselves. So this is a cabin that I have built for my parents to enjoy time with us in their retirement, a space for them to have a getaway from the city as well. And so yeah, I'm just really thrilled to have been able to construct this for them, and I'm looking forward to them coming here and spending a tremendous amount of time with us in the future. That's what this cabin is all about for me. Now, before we go inside the cabin, I do want to address one thing. We have caught a lot of shade in the comments over the last couple of videos about my decision to position the cabin so close to the edge of the gully. And frankly, I'm a little bit heartbroken that you don't have more faith in me than that. We have, of course, made sure that we did soil testing to make sure that this bank is stable. We have really well secured the cabin here, and I personally have absolutely no concerns about the stability or the location of this cabin. On the contrary, it was actually very intentional, our placement of it here. We have really good rocky ground that is incredibly stable. We have a bank that has existed for hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of years out there, and this is a really, really good position for the cabin because we really get to capitalize on the incredible views of the gully. And when I show you what we've created on the rear deck, I think that might help you to understand why it was so important for me to situate this cabin exactly where I did. I love my mum and dad. I'm in no rush for an inheritance, and so killing them in a cabin landslide was not my intention with this build. And I'm confident that that is not going to happen. So, with all that being said, let's take a look inside the cabin. Welcome inside. I am absolutely thrilled to bits with how this cabin turned out. My vision for the interior of this cabin was very much to create a kind of hybrid. I wanted to maintain that quintessential coziness of a cabin, but I also wanted to modernize it a little bit. Obviously, we've kept the very cozy cabin aesthetic that just comes through from having all of this beautiful timber, as well as the connection to the outdoors, the amount of nature that we can see from the cabin, but we've modernized it a lot, especially through the use of the cabinetry in here. We've used black HPL cabinetry, which I just think looks so good. It's so nice, it's so clean looking, and I think it really beautifully fits into the cabin aesthetic, even though it's a little bit modern. I've also modernized it through the use of lighting in here. I wanted the lighting to be very simple. I wanted it to be sort of hidden in the day and then really make a bit of a feature at night. And I've done that by utilizing LED strip lighting, which we have run on the ceiling right next to some of the roof rafters. And I've used black lenses for those. So in the day, it just kind of disappears away. You can see it, but it sort of really looks like it's in place with the sort of cabinetry design and all of that sort of thing. But then at night, it just becomes this really wonderful feature. And one of the things that was quite unexpected, but I absolutely love about the lighting is the way that it just throws the light down onto the walls in those angles. I really think that that makes for quite a beautiful feature. The main lights are all dimmable, so in the evening you can bring those lights right down to a sort of very gentle, very warm light. And then when you do need task lights, we have task lights such as the bar light, which is built into the kitchenette, as well as reading lights in the bedroom. So yeah, really thrilled with how the lighting in here all looks. The electrical design of this cabin was definitely a little bit tricky. As I explained in the earlier videos, it is a solid log cabin style construction, which meant that we did have to drill some service holes for our electrical wiring. We've used some blocking to help get the electrical switches further off the wall in some of the cases where we couldn't fit things like dimmer mechanisms into the holes that we'd drilled for it. So again, I think that is a really nice finish and I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. We've run the vast majority of the wiring either under the floors or in the ceilings, which has enabled us to sort of get quite a lot of electricity around the house, quite a lot of light fittings in a way that's really tidy. To help get some of the wiring up onto the roof, we have run some wooden conduit on the exterior as well. So again, that was just a nice tidy way of doing it. Now, my understanding is that when it comes to building an up to 30 square meter sleep out in New Zealand, one of the rules is that unfortunately, we are not allowed to add any plumbing. So for that reason, we've built a very simple kitchenette into this space. There's a really good amount of storage. There is a large pantry area. We've installed a fridge. You've got a prep area. Really, this is a space for tea and coffee making, maybe prepping some cheese and crackers and snacks and things like that. We do also have additional cooking facilities, which are the barbecue outside, which also has the side cooker in case you want to fry some vegetables or something like that as well. But ultimately, it is not designed to be a really hyper-functional, fully performing kitchen. That being said, we have also future-proofed this kitchen design so that if we wanted to in the future, we would be able to install a sink and a faucet and run some plumbing, and that would make the whole space unquestionably a lot more functional. We've built in a good-sized bookshelf in here as well. Really love that feature. There's nothing like cozying up next to the fire, reading a good book in the cabin to complete the experience. And so that was an essential must-have. Speaking of that, the other absolutely essential must-have was our fireplace. We have installed the Roaring Meg Eco Fire, which I just love to bits. It's one of my absolute favorite tiny house fires, and I think it just looks so good in this space, especially offset against the heat shielding which we've installed, which is made from beeswax coated steel, which beautifully ties into the cabinetry. And again, I really am happy with how that's turned out. Now, putting in a fireplace into a cabin like this in New Zealand, again, I hate talking about rules and regulations because it varies so much from location to location. So obviously do your own research for your own projects and make sure that you're seeking out advice from your local authorities as to what you can get away with. Here it is not consented activity to install a fireplace, so that is the one thing which we have had to lodge consent applications for, and that the council wanted to come out and check and make sure that everything was installed correctly. Again, it's sort of a safety thing. They want to make sure that people aren't putting wood burners in places where it's going to irritate their neighbors, or that they're being installed in ways that become safety issues for people. So I do completely understand that. Of course, another must-have cabin essential for me is a good leather couch. So again, I just think that's something that fits beautifully into this space, and what a spot to sit there, take in the view, enjoy an afternoon next to a roaring fire. Mum and Dad will actually be lucky if I don't move in here myself. Anyway, another thing which I really love about this cabin is the floors. 100-year-old reclaimed Remu flooring out of an old bungalow in Auckland. These floors have just turned out beautifully. They add so much character. Again, the flooring that came with the kit set has been repurposed, and we used that as the sarking underneath the awning, which I think has just beautifully tied everything together. I'm, again, really happy with how that turned out. I know I'm saying that a lot, but I'm really happy with a lot of things in this cabin. The doors and windows that come with the kit set are pretty cool. These are European style tilt and turns. They are really nice. They are double glazed as well. And one thing about this cabin that I have noticed is that it is beautifully toasty and warm. It is really well insulated. It's very cold at the moment. Temperatures dropped to about 2 degrees Celsius overnight last night, but with the fire going, this place is absolutely toasty. We have insulated the ceiling, we've insulated the floors as well, so that also helps. So overall, I'm really happy with the performance of this space so far. Behind me against this wall, I have a stool with a little bit of a sad looking plant right now. In the future, I am going to be putting a small dining table there. I really wanted to find the right piece of furniture for it though, and I just haven't found it yet, so I'm still on the hunt for that. Now, before we go into the bedroom, I want to show off one other thing that I'm really chuffed with, and that is this door. Now, the Palmarco cabin kit set did come with a standard door to be used here. However, we found that because of the modifications that we made cutting some additional holes for the rear French doors, that we had a little bit of timber left over. So we thought it would be a really nice feature to construct a solid door out of the same timber that the walls are made out of. And again, so happy with how this looks. We've handmade some handles, and yeah, just adds a lot of character to the space, I think. You know what? Palmarco should do this themselves because it's a nice feature. I really do like this. Let's go have a look inside the bedroom. And now we are in the bedroom. This room is about as cozy as it gets. I am pleasantly surprised with how the fit out of this room worked out in the long run. I was a little bit concerned about some of the size and dimensions. I mentioned in the last video that Mum and Dad had given me one thing that they just wouldn't compromise on, and that was that the room had to have a super king-sized bed. They said they've slept in a super king-sized bed their whole life and they just wouldn't be comfortable in anything else. So I am so happy that I was able to make the dimensions work in this design, and it actually looks brilliant. I thought that it was going to feel a little bit tight to get through the end of the bed and this wall here, but there's actually plenty of space and it's worked out really well. So now we have this lovely room which has a tremendously big bed and a huge amount of storage in here as well. Again, the cabinetry in here just makes the space. We've got large wardrobes on either side. We've got the built-in bedside tables. Again, all of the light switching has been neatly built into the cabinets. And then overhead as well, we have these recessed overhead cabinets, which just give us so much storage. There's just so much storage in here. And underneath those overhead cabinets, we have put in reading lights. So yeah, really thrilled with how that worked. We have made an additional modification to this cabin. This window was originally not there, but the whole point of me putting this cabin in this location was to celebrate the beautiful forest backdrop. And so I am so happy that we've added this window. It just makes for such an incredible feature. In my original designs for this cabin, it was in this room where I had built in a bathroom design. Essentially from where the window is to where the wardrobe is, I was going to put in a couple of walls, which would have given us enough space to add a small shower, a basin, and a toilet. There's a couple of reasons why I didn't want to do that. First of all, it was really difficult to make all of that work and still have such a large bed in here. It would have definitely made this room a lot pokier. The other challenge with that was also it would have essentially been against the permitted activity in terms of building this cabin. As soon as there's plumbing that goes into one of these, it requires additional consent. So to avoid all of that, I have not built it into this cabin. I am really keen to do a project later on though, where I build a really beautiful matching outside bathroom to this cabin. I really want to be able to sit on the loo and look out into that forest. What a view. Now, let me show you what I think might just be my absolute favorite part of this build, the back deck. This 3x3 meter deck is nothing short of enchanting. Right from the beginning of this project, for me, so much of the location was about celebrating this incredible vista out into the gully. Some of these trees are estimated to be anywhere between 400 and 600 years old. That is just so much history. And for me, looking out into that gully feels like you could be looking back in time. And yeah, I am absolutely captivated by it. The way that the light falls through the trees in the afternoon is completely mesmerizing. And I wanted to create a space that was absolutely dedicated to celebrating that. And I feel that we have done just that with this addition. It's built in a quasi treehouse style as well. So you really feel like you're elevated in amongst the trees. And the result is very, very special. I've kept the decor here very simple. We have 2 lounge chairs, and the one thing that I always really envisioned here was a fire table. I wanted to create a fire table up here so that we would be able to sit out, enjoy a drink, have the fire, and then enjoy the view. So everything about this area is designed to be simple and 100% connect you with this wonderful outdoor environment. And the outdoor furniture was all supplied by Trade Tested too, which is really cool. If you haven't already done so, I highly recommend you go back and watch our 2 earlier videos which showcase the build of this cabin, because if you're really interested in how anything was done, we go into a lot of detail about the materials and the construction techniques that we use to make all of this happen. To summarize though, ultimately, building this cabin was a really wonderful experience. We had a tremendous amount of fun. The kit set itself is great. I actually do really highly recommend these. I think for the price point, they are exceptional value. And I think we have also done a really great job in taking this kit set to a whole other level by putting in these modifications, by extending it with the decks and the awnings, by adding a solid roof over the whole structure. And yeah, ultimately, I am just thrilled to bits with it. I think between the kit set itself and then the modifications that we've made, we really have created a pretty exceptional space here. I think mum and dad are gonna really love their time here. And like I said before, they'll honestly be pretty lucky if I don't boot them out and move in here myself, because I'm really quite enjoying being in this cabin. Let's talk about cost. The kit set itself retails in New Zealand for just under 40,000 New Zealand dollars, which personally I think is exceptional value. You get a lot of bang for your buck with that kit set. And with just the addition of some foundations and some oil or paint to protect, you get a fully functioning cabin for that price, which I think is great value. Now that cabin is in Palmarco's higher range of their log cabins and garden house builds, which start at around 7,000 New Zealand dollars and then work their way right up to that sort of $40,000 range here. So if you're wanting to do a project like this, you certainly don't need to go to that extreme end. You can find cheaper options available as well. Now, when it comes to the additions, that is where my costs really started climbing. There's no escaping it when you do any kind of build project at the moment. The cost of materials are absolutely exorbitant. Labor costs are high as well if you're not doing it as a DIY project. And so, that definite feeling that doing any kind of build, especially in New Zealand right now, just feels like setting money on fire. It's actually quite alarming at how quickly the costs add up. So let me break it all down for you so that I can give you a good idea of where the cost came in and how things really mounted up. So we have the base cabin cost, which was $40,000. We then have the site prep, foundations, cabin assembly, decks, awnings, and the flooring installation. So that all came to just under 100,000 New Zealand dollars. So roughly 50% of that would have been materials and the other 50% of that would have been labor. I was pretty surprised at how quickly those costs add up, but in reality, there is a huge amount of work that goes into doing a project like this. The actual assembly of the cabin was very quick. We did that in about 3 days, but certainly all of the other work surrounding it was much more time and labor intensive. So that did add a lot of cost to the project. In addition to that, we had the cabinetry fit out, which came in to just under 18,000 New Zealand dollars. We had the electrical fit out, which was just under 12,000 New Zealand dollars. Again, it was really quite interesting how fast the electrical costs climbed, but we did do quite a bit of unusual stuff in this cabin, and there was quite a bit of the work in here which was quite fiddly for the electricians. So I think that's one of the reasons why those costs came in a little bit higher than what I was expecting. We then have the roofing costs, the cost of the metal roof. So all up, that came to $17,000, which I was a little bit shocked at. I think I'm really happy with the result, but yeah, it was definitely at the higher end of what I was expecting again. In saying that, this location made things quite difficult, and about $4,000 of that $17,000 came from just hiring and putting up the scaffolding, which was essential in this location for safety, obviously. So yeah, so that brings the total cost of the build to $186,500 or thereabouts, which I think is really painful to my wallet, but worth it. Worth it. I've created a space here that I'm really proud of, and I just don't want to put a price tag on the ability to create memories here with my mum and dad, my family, and of course Rasa. But yeah, I think it's worth it for me. I'm really, really happy with what I've created here. I think this cabin fits so beautifully into the landscape, the way that it's sort of tucked into the hill, nestled into the forest behind it. It feels like it belongs here. And as I work on landscaping around the cabin, as the grass grows back and the cabin sort of ages into the landscape a little bit, I think it's just going to look more and more and more like it really belongs here. So I am very, very thrilled with the result. Now, I do want to reiterate that that cost is definitely on the higher end of the scale. We really spared no expense in building what I wanted to create here. If you were wanting to do a more simple project with just the kit set and then installing some simple foundations, if you are DIYing it and not paying for additional labor, then I see no reason why you couldn't take a $40,000 kit set like this and for an additional $10,000 to build some foundations and construct the space, still end up with a really nice garden cabin. I hope you've enjoyed watching us build this cabin. It has been such a treat to have you along for the ride with us. With all of my heart, I want to say a huge thank you to Palmarco and Trade Tested for making this project possible and helping us to bring this vision to life. It has been so much fun, and if you are watching this and feel like getting stuck into your own similar project, I highly recommend it. And so for now, all of the hard work is done and we can sit back and enjoy the fruits of our labor. I am so excited for the memories that are yet to be created here in this cabin.